Hello and welcome for those who are joining us. We're allowing a moment for everyone to get connected. We'll begin shortly. Delaney, we're ready to begin.
Awesome. All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. On behalf of the students, staff, and volunteers at the IU Eskenazi Museum of Art, thank you for gathering around the virtual table with us to celebrate Juneteenth. We are so excited to present Pairing Art with Food and Poetry. We're thrilled to talk with featured guests L. Renée and Just Duléa. My name is Delaney Bailey. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a museum host and student studying comprehensive design at IU. With me to host the program are Laura Shepper, Public Experiences Manager, and we were hoping to have Kaylee Dance, food and lifestyle Instagrammer. Hopefully she can join us a little bit later. First, we wish to acknowledge and honor the Indigenous communities native to this region and recognize that Indiana University Bloomington was built on Indigenous homelands and resources. We recognize that the Miami, Delaware, Potawatomi, and Shawnee people as past, present, and future caretakers of this land. This program is being recorded. For updates when video recordings are released to YouTube, sign up for Museum News. So here are a few tips for optimizing your experience today. There are several ways to adjust the size of images on the screen while you're looking at artwork. If you're connected from a PC or laptop, at the top of your screen, look for View Options. Click on View Options to select settings that work best for you. The vertical bar between the slides and the speaker slides left and right to make the presentation slides or the speaker bigger or smaller. For those connecting with an iPhone or iPad, you may be able to enlarge images by pinching on the screen. Closed captioning is available. This can be turned on through your Zoom toolbar, which is typically located at the bottom of your screen. So we invite you to participate in the conversation today. There's two ways to do this. You're welcome to type into the chat. The chat will not be visible in the recording. If you wish to be unmuted to speak with us during parts of the conversation, we invite you to use the raise hand feature in the toolbar. Again, both of those features are found in your Zoom toolbar, typically at the bottom of your screen. The Eskenazi Museum values its students, and I have the great privilege of introducing today's featured guests. So Just Duléa is a poet and spoken word artist from New York, New York. She has been a writer for 10 years and is the founder and CEO of Conviction to Change Publishing, a publishing company that seeks to tell those stories traditionally found on the margins. Her work prioritizes the themes of Blackness and African-centered thought, gender, sexuality, and spirituality. Just Duléa holds a BBA from the University of Miami, an MFA from San Francisco State University, and is currently a third-year doctoral student in the African American and African Diaspora Studies Department at Indiana University Bloomington. L. Renée is a poet and a nonfiction writer from Columbus, Ohio. She is a third-year MFA candidate at Indiana University, where she has served nonfiction editor of Indiana Review and associate director of the Indiana University Writers Conference. Her work, nominated for Best Poets and a Pushcart Prize, has been anthologized in Women of Appalachia Project's Women Speak, Volume 6. She is the recipient of Indiana University Guy Lemond's Award in Public Writing, Appalachian Review's Denny C. Plattner Award, and second place winner of the Crystal Wilkinson Creative Writing Prize from Pluck, the Journal of Affrican Arts and Culture, and the New Limestone Review. Her poems have been published or forthcoming in the Tin House, Online, Obsidian, Poet Lore, and the Minnesota Review, the Southern Humanities Review, the Sheila Nagig Online, and elsewhere. She has received support from the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, Kenyon Review Writers Workshop, Minnesota Northwoods Writers Conference, Martha's Vineyard, Institute of Creative Writing, Oak Spring Garden Foundation, and the Sundress Academy for the Arts. L. Renée believes in Black joy, which she occasionally expresses on Instagram at her Instagram handle, L. Renée Poems. So a warm welcome to you both. We're so happy to talk with you today.
Welcome. We are super excited to talk with you. Hello, Just Duléa. Hello, Renée. How are you today?
Doing well, thanks. And you?
Doing well. I'd like to just take a moment to welcome everyone to the virtual table with us today. It looks like there are about 29 of us gathered at the moment. So I'd like to just offer an opportunity for those who in the community who are sitting down at this virtual table with us to please introduce yourselves in the chat, maybe your name and pronouns. If there's a food or something else you'd like to, something you're working on or anything else you'd like to share, we'd like to just gather and see who's celebrating with us today. So hello to Shauna Lee. Hello to Susan. Welcome. I'm glad you could join us. Hello, Najibit. Hello, Dr. Howell. Great. So glad you could join us today. And hello and happy Juneteenth to Candace Smith. Hi, Sandy. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Teresa. Welcome. I'm so glad you all could join us to celebrate today. Hello to Tracy. Good morning, Mary. Hi, Lisa. Glad you could join us. So we do invite you to interact through the chat today. If at any point, like Delaney had said, if somebody wishes to be unmuted during the conversation, we can do that as well. Hello, Bianca, Carol. Hi, Virginia, and Anne, and Diane. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to screen share again, and I'm going to just walk us through a bit of how one might pair art with food or poetry. Of course, poets are the experts in that. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Before we do that, I would just like to take a moment to ask, we had a great conversation earlier about everything that's happening, in the context of the world, and we've got Juneteenth. Wanted to ask Just Duléa and L. Renée, in terms of nourishment. We were gathered and talking about food and nourishment, what you might be doing to nourish yourselves.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to start, Just Duléa. Thank you all for being here. It's really, really beautiful to be in your company. I think nourishment is really important, not in terms of just how we, fuel ourselves so we can have healthy bodies and minds, but also more particularly our emotional well-being and our spiritual well-being. And so for me, one of the beautiful things that I've been able to do with some dear hearts during this pandemic time is cook with people on Zoom. And that's been really beautiful. Shout out Shauna Lee. Our gatherings were really meaningful to me. I find that nourishment from food it feels like the flavors taste better when you're sharing it with someone else. So I've really appreciated that. And then I think also just like radical vulnerability. There's a kind of nourishment with that too, with I think people being willing to express themselves and trusting that the other person that they're talking to will be able to hold what they have to give. And I found a lot of nourishing conversations from that trust that's established and that vulnerability and care. And so that's been really beautiful for me at this time as well.
Thank you, L. Renée. I'm so, lightning. That means a lot to me. This is the question we've been asking of our visiting artists as well. So I'm just delighted to hear your perspective as well. Just Duléa, what about you?
So one of the primary things, and I think that this will be my forever answer, is prioritizing rest, because I realize that I'm not able to do more than I can in a moment, and just being gracious with myself to realize that I'm having the day that I'm having or the week that I'm having, and learning to accept that instead of beating myself up for it, but also trying to be more intentional about existing in community. So whether it's connecting with my sorors to do service or to just check in, calling my mom multiple times a day to check in, whatever community looks like in a given moment, but also trying to more recently take a moment to prioritize and find joy even in like the mundane things. Like even this morning, I was able to take my dog on a walk before it started raining and there were no cicadas outside. I found joy in that. And lastly, maintaining my spiritual practice has been really crucial, and just really staying connected and grounded spiritually into the ancestors to get through all that 2020 was.
Thank you. That is so powerful. I 1000% agree with, for me, that's similar to both what you've shared, Just Duléa and L, Renée. I think that rest has been critical. One of my favorite books right now, the title is just simply Rest. It's been really helpful to me to find, just like you were saying, of that moment, like walking your dog and just enjoying the joy of that and the restfulness. Being more intentional has helped me through the pandemic as well. And Renée, the radical vulnerability you talked about, those shared experiences over food, I can really relate on such a deep level to all of that. So thank you all for sharing. Oh, and Delaney, thank you. You've been reminding yourself to spend more time with your family at home. So thank you for the others who might share what they're doing to nourish themselves. So we are here gathered to celebrate Juneteenth, and I would just like to take a moment to share some context. So Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day or Emancipation Day or Jubilee Day, celebrates the freedom of everyone in our country. It's a commemoration of the end of slavery in the United States. It marks the day, which was June 19th, 1865, when African Americans as far south as Texas finally learned that slavery had been abolished. So 2.5 years before that, the Emancipation Proclamation had declared slaves in rebellious states free, but the word hadn't been shared with everyone. So by that time, there were about 250 Black Americans who were still enslaved in Texas. So the federal troops had come down to ensure the freedom of enslaved people. This year's Juneteenth is the 156th anniversary. And for the first time, as we learned on Thursday, it is now a federal holiday. I just want to also share, although many Americans, myself included, have grown up with Independence Day celebrations, 4th of July, and freedom that way, the Declaration of Independence didn't actually provide freedom for all. Of the individuals who were white men who signed the Declaration of Independence, 1/3 of them actually believed that they could rightfully own Black people, and the rest didn't successfully intervene. So it would be 89 years before everyone in the country would be free, and there is still much, much work to be done to dismantle racism. So Juneteenth is a day of remembering and taking action, but also celebrating. For me, it's a combination. So today we gather to celebrate. And so with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and move forward to how we go about this idea of pairing art with food and in poetry. So with each artwork that each time we do this, we kind of go through the same, what we call a thinking routine. A thinking routine is a habit of mind, a set of 3 questions or so that you can keep revisiting until it becomes a habit. It's developed by our colleagues at Harvard Project Zero. So this particular thinking routine is called See, Think, Wonder. People sometimes ask me about what are they supposed to do when they go to an art museum, or they say, I'm going to the gallery, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So this is the same process as something that you can use anytime you explore art on your own or with others. And the more perspectives that we invite in, the richer the conversation becomes. So we're going to start with an object that was selected by Renée. We're going to start by just allowing our eyes a moment to linger and look at the artwork and just kind of take it in detail. And then I'd like to ask, what do you see? So I'm going to ask if you might describe what you see with as much vivid detail as you can. So I'm going to turn first to Renée, who selected this object, and then I'll open it up. I'll go to the other panelists and open it up. So Renée, if you could start by sharing, what do you see here?
Thank you. Yeah, so I selected this pot. When I first saw it, it was arresting because I saw a female form. I saw a woman with her hands on her hips. And so that was kind of the first, the outline of the object that I saw. And I think upon further inspection, my eyes really landed beyond just the curves of the shape, the neck of the pot, and the roundness of the middle, and then the kind of curves of what I saw as kind of arms with the hands on the hips. I saw the etchings across the width of the pot. And those immediately reminded me of Linnea Negra on a pregnant woman's belly. And so that brought up kind of ideas about lineage for me, which you'll hear in the poem that I will read in response to this piece. And I also saw the various shades of brown, right? This is a clay pot, but there's so many different kinds of hues within that one color, from the way the shadow hits and the light hits, and even the texture, how that might change the color of the surface. And so there's a richness to the exterior of the pot as well, with the different textures of medium, of clay, of weathering, of etching, of lines and form. And that made me think so much of Black women and our multitudes that we contain. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you. That is beautiful. I had a chance to see this object in the gallery, and yeah, everything you just brought the experience back to me so vividly. I think with the multitude of the browns and the textures, and even like down below, it may not be as obvious in this picture, it's hard to convey in a photograph, but the weathering and the idea of what the pot might have been through really came to mind when I was looking at it. Just Duléa, what catches your eye? What do you notice?
So the first thing I noticed when looking at this piece was, to me, it represented community. But in looking at the etchings going across the pot, I began to think of waist beads, which are worn by women to mark time. And so in thinking about its coloration and the etchings and everything it's been through, thinking about like, what stories does this pot keep that have been etched throughout the time markers.
Beautiful. I'd like to open up to the rest of the group who's gathered with us today around the table. What do you see? What catches your eye? What are you noticing? Well, there aren't any comments. I'll move forward, and Lenny, you might check and just make sure the chat is working. So based on what you're seeing and based on your own life experience, what thoughts come to mind? So, Renée, I think you shared a bit first. Is there anything else you'd like to share in terms of thoughts that come to mind?
Yeah, I think it's funny when I've been thinking about pots lately, and also some kind of community sayings around pots. How pots are receptacles, right? They absorb, they take, they hold. And so I kind of laughed at myself because, you know, there's that saying, you know, the pot calling the kettle black, highlighting hypocritical commentary So that came to mind. Also, speech, hopefully this is not a bad word to say in a recording, but that you don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out. And so I was thinking a lot about how pots are signifiers, right? Not just of nourishment and feeding and care, but how people use pots to hold even leaks in roofs. And where my folks are from, which I'll talk a little bit about later, there's a pot inside the house in case you can't get to the outhouse and you need to relieve yourself. So the pot is, it's a kind of holding of so many different things. So I thought about all of those different things as well.
Thank you. Just Duléa, are there any other thoughts that come to mind for you in looking at this piece?
Just to echo what Renée said, just the multifaceted uses for pots. And so it just makes me really curious as to what has this pot seen? What does this pot know? Because everything has energy and everything has memory. So I'm just interested in what does the pot hold? What does it know?
That's great. That actually leads us. So you just shared a curiosity, and that leads to my next question about what kind of questions or curiosities emerge. We all come at this with different life experiences, and I just wonder. So you've shared an answer. Renée, just a moment ago, but we were preparing, you had shared with me that many questions came up for you, and I think those will come out in a bit when you share your piece in response. So I'll open up to the community. Are there other questions or curiosities that come up when looking at this pot? Or if either of our guests care to share anything? Ooh, okay. Gloria is asking she's curious about what kind of processes did the pot endure to get into its current state. I wonder about that too, particularly when I was in the gallery looking at some of the lower sections of it, where I wondered, is it burnt? Was it over a fire for cooking? Was it in a warmth? Was it a warmth? What was the temperature? Yeah, what did it go through? So I'd like to share a little bit about this piece. This is from the Bamileke peoples in present-day Cameroon. It is a cooking pot from the 20th century. Its size, I know it's hard to tell in photographs. It is about 9.5 inches by 13 inches roughly. It is a gift to the museum from William Itter, and the museum is very grateful for the gift. It is an object that is actually currently on view on the 3rd floor of the museum in the focus exhibition titled Looking at Form and Surface in African Ceramics. So there is an essay accompanying that exhibition that I will ask Delaney to drop into the chat. The essay is written by Alison Martino, who is the Laura and Raymond Vilgas Curator of Arts of Africa, Oceania, and the Indigenous Arts of the Americas. And it was co-written by Emma Folse, who is a collection specialist. What I can share about this object is that it is the exhibition's focus on form and surface really invites people to consider how the visual aspects and designs of 20th century African ceramics reveal artists' creativity and skills and expertise, as well as different approaches to ceramics across the continent. Ceramicists are creating surface decoration through attention to pattern, which we talked about the lines, the lineage going through, the pigment. We talked about the variation and the browns and the tones and the distress or the things that it's been through, as well as texture. And I think we can see all of those elements in this particular piece. Decorative techniques include incising. So we saw the incisions of the lines going through it, pressing, even in some cases adding bits of clay. Ceramics have a long history on the African continent and are associated with ancient societies. Ceramics were and continue to be significant in many aspects in Africa, from uses within homes for cooking to spiritual settings to political context. So here image to show that the essays and so forth, additional information can be found in collections online. Objects can be viewed there as well. So from here, I'd like to just ask the question, based on the conversation that we're having, before we reveal the foods and the poems. I'd like to open it up to everybody else who's gathered at the table. What ideas come to mind? What do you think you might pair with this artwork, and why? The beautiful thing is that there are no right answers when pairing. It's just based on individual experiences. So I'm curious if anybody cares to share any ideas that come to mind for pairings.
Just while people are getting some things in the chat, when you're talking about pairing, you mean food pairings, right?
Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
Ah, okay. Yeah, when I first saw this piece, it made me think of something which I'll share when I read. But I think about a pot of beans, and how beans were really used as a staple, a sustaining staple, for my folks in West Virginia, but also, as I came to learn, for others in other places. And so I think immediately of a pot full of beans.
Thank you. And thank you, Tracy, for coming to mind for possibly this. So that's actually leads to what I paired with this particular object. So I chose a vegan red stew. What the recipe is coming from. So I wanted to highlight Black food creatives. This recipe is from That Green Life. It is, so when I looked at the object, I was really curious about how it might have been used. So we can respond to objects in different ways. In this case, I was thinking about the warmth. I was curious about the Bamileke peoples and what kind of foods they might be eating. Of course, I don't know what the pot was actually used for, but I did learn that that beans and plantains and nuts, that there was a variety of things that would be common to people in the grasslands area of Cameroon, to the Bamileke people. So when I was looking through, this recipe was actually featured in last year's virtual Juneteenth cookout. And even though this recipe is not from Cameroon, it originates, the inspiration comes from Ghana, not Cameroon. So to be clear about that, but I felt like some of the ingredients would give a nod to the region. And I will say, I had not made this before and I loved it. I will definitely make again. So Delaney is going to share the recipe in the chat if she has not already. Another great option is, I was looking at the rings that I think Renée, you mentioned, and sliding around there. And I was looking at this recipe for beautiful things and beautiful eats and things. And for me, the peaches, like the warmth and the circular nature of those. And I thought about the clean knife, like it would have been a clean cut on a knife. That just kind of, to me, connected with that piece. Also, Kaylee is not able to join us this morning. She had a power outage during the storm and still doesn't have power back, but she had shared her response to this particular piece was a pasta salad. She had shared with me earlier that she was responding to the form and sort of the shape of the handles, and that she thought this might be something that she might bring to a Juneteenth cookout celebration. So this is her own personal recipe, and she wanted to extend her thoughts and her excitement to join us. Hopefully she'll be able to get online and join us, but it sounds like the power has not been restored and her devices aren't charged. So from there, I'd like to invite Renée to share her poem with us.
Okay, I was looking for the unmute button. So just to add a little bit of context, part of my work involves collecting oral histories from family members in my maternal line and conducting archival research. My mother is the second youngest of 10 siblings who were mostly raised in Appalachia, specifically in coal mining communities of Southern West Virginia. My grandmother was infamous for her cooking and baking, feeding a sizable family and neighbors' children who also joined her dinner table. I'm consistently struck by the abundance that my grandmother was able to cultivate by growing her own garden despite the coal dust, and how she made my grandfather's mining check stretch. She did this by meal planning, I've learned, and I've heard many stories about her weekly pot of pinto beans that some family members look forward to while others dreaded. I was originally inspired to write that narrative, how Black folk consistently make a whole lot of something out of nothing, that in so doing is quintessential Blackness. But as I began to look at this pot, I began to think about the life it had before I came to look at it, what narratives it already held, and how it was that I was coming to look upon this pot in the first place. I had so many questions, and for me, questions mean research. So I read a bit about kingdoms of Central Cameroon in ethnographic and historical texts. I won't get into everything here that stunned me, but I hope you'll be able to hear how what I read informed some of my questions in this poem. I was surprised, though, to end back up where I started, thinking of my grandmother, thinking of all the mothers who fed all the bodies, who persisted so we could be made and one day be free. This poem is entitled 31 Questions for the Cooking Pot. 1, how many hands have reached for you? 2, what were the intentions of their reaching? 3, did they grab you by your arms, your waist, or your neck? 4, did your fist ball then on your hips? 5, were you indignant? 6, did they call you indigent? 7, were you so poor you needed a name? 8, is Bamalike your name? 9, how does it feel to be named in administrative shorthand? 10, where is the location of colonial mispronunciation? 11, does it live in 100 chiefdoms like you? 12, what becomes of multitudes reduced to be understood? 13, help me understand, why are you called a vessel? 14, what is carried in the belly of your ship? 15, who is carried by the belly of your ship? 16, whose bellies did you feed maize and yam? 17, what water kept you afloat in grasslands? 18, where did you pour out water as libation? 19, when you poured, did ancestors hear you? 20, did your children listen to what your water said? 21, do you still keep count of every life? 22, how do you carry all those skulls while you travel this life? 23, is each etching across your middle linea negra that never left? 24, is leaving always a migration? 25, is leaving always a trade? 26, whose traits did you take with you? 27, whose fingerprints pressed your clay? 28, what pressure molded you? 29, how did you craft meal and child from the same hot womb? 30, is feeding a kind of mothering? 31, are all mothers born food? Thank you.
Wow, I'm at a loss for words. What powerful, powerful questions. I cannot say thank you enough for oh, I'm not on, for sharing this response with us today. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, though, Renee. This gives us much to think about for much time. Absolutely beautiful, indeed, and powerful. Actually, I'm just allowing myself a moment to linger and sit with this. Beautiful. So for our next reading today, so we have a multi-course, just like in a menu, we would have multiple things on a menu. The next item on our menu is an object selected by Just Duléa. So what we'll do first, like we just did a moment ago, is to look at the object and allow our eyes a moment to soak it in. Oh, I see there was a raised hand. Delaney, if you would like to allow that person to speak.
That was me. It was an accident.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask, what do you, first question again, what do you see? And I'll open this up to the community first this time. So in the chat, if you could describe what you see with as much vivid detail as you can. Hearts. Yes, I see a heart here that's, the heart is made of gold, or it looks golden, and it looks like it's embellished. So I'll describe it. With seeing royalty. Yes, I wondered about that as well. Comes to mind. There seems to be some flourishes in the art, and this looks like possibly the shape of an M. I'm not sure if it means that, but I see that shape here. I see some geometric pattern or grid within the heart, and some dots, and a shape protruding upward, growing forth from the heart. Again, it's a circle with some geometry within it, and some dots, and then a star shape protruding from the top of that. Yeah, somebody has said the heart is the focused. There's an inverted heart below with some swirls, again, gold. So much embellishment. The background is it's a rich red color, and I can see some horizontal striations in that. Let's see, an open book. I see in the chat a queen, seeing a queen or royalty. The texture is catching some people's eyes. Possibly a crown at the top. Yes. Great descriptions. So based on what we see and based on your own life experience, what thoughts are coming to mind? Just Duléa, I will turn to you first. You've selected this object.
So the original thought that came to mind was the reason why I chose it, which is when looking at this, I saw the sanctity of the piece because it is a sacred veve from Haitian Vodou. And so with that, I thought about first, whose veve is this? Because I had some ideas, but I needed to consult with my elders to be sure that I was able to correctly identify the deity. But then I thought about, well, why was this chosen as the cover for this project? And also, what story is this veve in the sacred drawing trying to tell us contemporarily, and also when it was invoked and why?
Thank you. Renée, are there thoughts that come to mind for you in looking at this based on your life experience?
Yeah, I think the thing that stuck out to me most about this piece is the symmetry, right? If you were to fold the piece vertically, one half would mirror the other. And that feels really important to me in thinking about ancestors always, and how we carry them and all of the spirits that we carry in our bodies. So I think about that a lot, the kind of like duality, the mirror, you know, the same number of dots, the same curvatures, the same, with a little slight, because it's not like a carbon copy, right? It's still, the hand is making these movements. So there's still a degree of something that's like not exactly perfect too. And looking at the left side of the M, if you want to call that scroll sits a little bit lower to my eye than the right side. But so we're not carbon copies, but we carry these same kind of founding, not just DNA, but these same founding spirits with us. So I definitely see that.
Thank you for the richness of your reflection. Are there others who are joining us at the table today that would like to share any thoughts that come to mind? I saw the word prosperity. Other thoughts? If not, we'll move on to what questions, or what do you wonder? What questions or curiosities come to mind in looking at this piece? I'll start with Just Duléa.
So my main curiosity is, what would this look like in ceremony to have Erzulie Fantor invoked because of the deity that she is? Like, what does this look like in community? What does this look like in ritual form? And what hope or inspiration did this give to the ancestors who drew it in times of need?
Thank you for the richness of your response as well. I also see a question about what the dots or might represent any of the other symbolism within that overall symbol. So I'd like to share a bit about this piece as well. This image is actually of a photo of part of the cover. It's a red silk clad portfolio containing 6 color photographs that are, it's in the museum's collection. The portfolio is by the artist Renée Stout. She's an American artist, born 1958. The title of the portfolio is Red Room at 5, created in 1999. It is 11 inches by 14 inches. So again, we're looking at a photo of part of the cover of that. It came to the museum purchased with funds from the Clarence W. and Mildred Long Art Purchase Fund. It's object 2011.266, and you'll see, as I'll share in a moment, some of the images held within. So you'll see that they are identified as A through E within that. So here's a bit of information I found in the collections database. So the cover is stamped, like Just Duléa said, with a gold symbol for Erzulie, the Haitian voodoo goddess of love. By referencing her African diaspora spiritual heritage, Renée Stout explored themes of self-discovery, empowerment, and healing. Erzulie is a symbol of women's strength. Known not only for her passion and beauty, she's also a fierce protectorate of women and children. So I'd like to just take a moment for those who may be curious about what is inside. We'll look through the 6 images contained within, and then we'll return to the cover, which is what Just Duléa has chosen to respond to. So I'll just verbally describe. So here in the first image, we see the image is glowing. It's a room that's glowing in red. And so we see really the silhouette of a woman who is seated in the room. She is reaching upward toward a window that is kind of framed with soft curtains. We see a wireframe outline in the bottom left corner. Oh, I guess I see in the chat a monogram. Yes, that's a good thought as well. The second image in this series is perfume. It's a luxurious table of perfume bottles that is set, which would be a popular offering to Erzulie. We see a third image is a spirit resting on satin and velvet pillows. This whole image has a fiery red-orange glow to it. In the next image, we see again a silhouette, in this case, a nude woman looking out the same window. She's resting her hand on a sculptural wire headboard and allowing the pillows are also still visible in the background. She raises to leave. Again, she's reaching her hand upward toward the window. And then in the final image, only the empty room remains, still glowing red. So I'm going to return to the cover of this work and ask, and looking, we talked some about the symbol, the adornment on the cover. I'm the red and the silk covering, I'm wondering what kind of ideas for a food or a beverage might pair with this particular artwork and why? Does anybody have any ideas to share?
Immediately, I thought of strawberries. I think just something really like red and luscious. Like there's a kind of, I don't know if that's the right word, but there's like a sensuous lusciousness of not only this image, but the sequence of images. And so thinking about like texture, how strawberry seeds have those, the little dots, like the hearts, right? And that also have this kind of soft fleshiness. And so there's a little contrast in the texture, but they're also really luscious and sweet. So something strawberry, definitely for me.
Thank you. And I'm seeing a lot of wonderful responses in the chat as well. Tracy shared the red wine for sure and chocolate. I think that speaks to the lusciousness and some of the depthness and richness that we were just talking about. Pomegranates, seeds, let's see, red wine, sorrel, several responses with deep, deep red wine or sangria. Wonderful answers. It's so beautiful to hear different ideas that come forth. Each person, we each have our own perspective and ideas. And that's kind of the fun here. So for me, similar, I paired a beverage, a watermelon sparkle. So I too was responding to the red in this, the fruits that came to mind. I actually combined two different recipes. One of them is for watermelon limeade by Ty at On Ty's Plate. And the other recipe was a blackberry ginger soda from Dawn at DMR Fine Foods. And Delaney can share those in the chat. But what I did was I pulled from the watermelon limeade. I really liked the way the opacity that she got by blending, by pureeing the watermelon and that fruit, that really the silk cover and just the opacity and the richness of that. But I also wanted to pull in the sparkle. I was thinking about that symbol on there and that aspect of royalty. Like I think embellishment is not the right word, it falls short, but this idea of a lusciousness or a sparkle, I guess is my word, to celebrate. So that's where I brought in the other recipe for the with the ginger ale and the club soda, and kind of combined those and added the fruit in there. So that was my response. Kaylee has messaged and said that she sends her best wishes, but she doesn't have the power to be here. So I'm sorry we're not able to share her pairing today. With that, I'm going to pull back up the chat and see if I might have missed other. Okay, so from here, Just Duléa, I will turn it over to you for your response.
Thank you. I couldn't find the mute button. And before I begin, I just want to acknowledge the ancestors, both mine and ours communally. I also want to acknowledge all of the divinities and deities of our ancestral traditions and any elders who may be present here this afternoon. The title of my piece is A Love Letter to Liberation. I cultivate these words on the backs of ancestors who cultivated crops watered by blood, tears, and broken bodies. Backs flayed by those Columbusing their bodies as they stood on legs tired of jumping Jim Crow. I dedicate these words to those who found liberation within themselves while still not free. I lend my voice to give an accounting for the blood that cries out, blood that has cried since 1619, blood that will continue to cry out until there is truly liberty and justice for all. This is my love letter to the Yoruba, the Fon, the Dahomey. This is my love letter to every part of the African continent that lost loved ones to the treachery of enslavement. This is my love letter to my ancestral homes, to the Mafa, Masa, and Kotoko. This is my love letter to the conjure women, the medicine men, the priests, the priestesses. This is my love letter to those who live to tell the stories, This is my love letter to liberation. To liberation. Is there a greater love than to be held in your arms at long last? You rock me gently, kissing the places that capitalism hurt. You tell me stories of how my ancestors danced, sang, and fought out of their bondage, how the music of liberation includes the sound of shackles loosed. As you teach me and instruct me in your ways of liberation, oh, the pleasure of being overwhelmed by the return of memory unrestrained. Sacred symbols reclaimed, signposts for those who found God within themselves, those that carried them, their ancestral gods, hidden away in their bodies in the depths of their being and have not forsaken them. To my liberated ancestors, I hold your hand as you walk with me. I will never leave you because I am you and you are me. I know that freedom never came in the morning for some, only in mourning. Your lamentations can still be heard. I still hear those that cry out for Pharaoh to let our people go as we try to exist in a modern day Babylon. I take your hand as we go home together, touching our inheritance. Through my dreams, you show me the lands our souls are from. I gaze upon our legacy, our resilience with childlike wonder. Do you not feel joy in stepping into opulence long remembered, opulence long deserved? I feel you breathe in the luxury of rest, a reward long overdue for your resilience. We reclaim the wealth taken from everywhere colonialism touched, redistributed via red lines. From Africa, they took diamonds from her eyes, failing to see that a people oppressed shine the brightest. Coal was taken from her thighs, oil from her breast, children from her womb. We are those children, forced to give birth in a foreign land, but though afflicted, we have never been barren. They thought they were taking slaves, but you cannot make a slave of someone who knows their purpose. When Haiti freed herself, the Western world closed ranks, casting judgment down upon her. When the Maroons hid themselves, colonial powers were at their wits' end, casting curses down upon them. When revolutionaries arose, fighting back, plotting in the midnight hour, the slavocracy formed new terrors to break the body, but they could not touch the soul. Children of the diaspora, we are the cornerstone the builder rejected. Our unifying will leave systems fragmented. Without us, there is no structure that will stand. To the progenitors of liberation movements, the conjure women, medicine men, priests, priestesses, revolutionaries, conductors, maroons, lookouts, decoys, and those who dared to say no more. You tapped into your Ashe, trusted your Ori, and called on your gods, your Orisha, your Loa, and they responded, bringing victory, speaking truth to power. You drew veves on the ground, held sacred ritual, used your bodies as living sacrifices so generations might know liberation. To liberation. My love letter to you remains unfinished. We make monuments that testify to you, but our memory should not be encased in stone. We need to breathe new life into you as we press forward. America has handed us a form of freedom, but not the fullness thereof. Trafficking in symbolism instead of action, pandering as though we should be pleased. Our ancestors watched their progeny stand to call in a debt centuries owed. This love letter remains unfinished, because complete freedom has yet to be reached. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Just Duléa. Again, I'm just going to sit and let this linger just for a moment. I just need to sit with this. Thank you so much for sharing your powerful words with us. I'm very moved by both of these sharings, and I wonder, want to be respectful of publishing, but at some point later, if you do and choose what you want, I would love to be able to sit with the words longer, and if you're willing to someday share in print, I would love to revisit. And yeah, there's so much richness here. I'll pull up the chat and just see. Very powerful, yes. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. So before we wrap up, I would just want to turn back to the community who's gathered here with us today. If there's anybody who would like to share anything, anything you might be taking with you today, any any closing thoughts? Stop sharing for a second. So I'm taking a lot with me, and I'm going to then turn it over to Delaney to share closing remarks.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone here this afternoon for a wonderful conversation that we had. Renée, and Just Duléa, on behalf of the students, staff, and volunteers at the Eskenazi Museum of Art, thank you so much for talking with us today and sharing your perspective and your powerful words with our community. We invite you to experience the artwork in person. With 7 galleries, there's lots to explore, including this vessel currently on view in the Focus exhibition of the Arts of Africa. The museum is open on Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays from noon to 5, and on Saturdays from noon to 7. Upcoming, we invite you to join us on October 7th when Zakia Najiba Dumas O'Neill discusses her artistic practice, which prioritizes queer social relations, Black women's identity formation, family, social architectures, and the desire for connectedness. She's a Chicago-based visual artist, educator, and independent curator. Her work is most often initiated by personal and social histories related to family legacy, queerness, community making, and interiority. She's also a co-founder of Concerned Black Image Makers, a collection-driven projects that prioritizes shared experiences and concerned by lens-based artists of the Black diaspora. For upcoming information about the rest of the Visiting Artist series, including talks aligned with the September, October, and November First Thursday festivals, you can sign up for the museum news. So we're super excited about the return of our students. So we invite you to come to the CultureFest October 19th, or August 19th, with extended hours from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. Unwind with art and music featuring DJ Space Buns, and art making with the museum's art-based wellness experience manager, Lauren. Plus, the first 200 guests get to try any one of 4 new self-guided experiences in the galleries. Can enjoy a half pint of ice cream from Chocolate Mousse. Choose any one of the 4 self-guided paths, which include options for self-care, engaging with cultures, exploring social justice, or creative ways to experience art with others. Or celebrate the Art of Character exhibition with us on August 21st with live jazz music and an ice cream social on the terrace. We also have Treat Yourself to a Self-Care Saturday. Join us for a restorative wellness retreat or art making conversation about mental health that will include perspectives and tools you can try from a social worker, an art therapist, and the museum's art-based wellness experience manager. This fall, we're excited to launch Students Exclusive's new monthly series for experiences for students with students. And then for a Saturday snack, we have Pairing Art and Food will resume in the fall and winter. So First Thursdays After Hours resumes in September with live music, open studio, and a visiting artist talk and more. At this time, we'd like to thank Bill Itter for his generous gift to the museum. Let's just make sure we get through all the slides. So pairing art with food and everything at the Eskenazi Museum is made possible by philanthropy. So if you've enjoyed today's program, please visit our website and make a donation. Even gifts of $5 make a difference. So thank you so much. Before you go, how was your experience today? We appreciate your feedback to help make better experiences. So we invite you to share your feedback in a quick and easy survey as you exit the webinar. So from all of us at the Eskenazi Museum of Art, take care and have a wonderful day.
Thanks again, especially to Renée and Just Duléa. Your powerful words are still lingering with me. Very, very moving. It's just such a depth and so much to think more about. So thanks again for being with us today and sharing your time.